It is Tracy from Low Country Shrimp and Knits, and for some reason I just did the most amazing broadcast ever. I mean, I'm pretty sure that people would be, coming in to present me awards, ticker tape parades would be in my honor, and it didn't. I think it was just too much awesome for Instagram to handle. So I'm going to try recording again. We may be interrupted now, though, because the shop is being open. And this is what happens when Judy's not here. Okay, do you see this? This is why I can't have nice things. Judy has a life, which is wrong and rude and wrong. And this is what happens. So next time around, when I'm famous, I'm going to have a video person. I'm sure they have a real name. And they're going to go, and they're going to make sure it's working, okay? So anyway, here I am. So this is Irreverent Knits. I am Tracy from Low Country Shrimp and Knits. And oh my goodness, it's been it already. I've lived a whole life, and none of you, I have no proof of it. I have no proof of it at all. So what I wanted to talk about briefly today is blocking, okay? And why blocking matters and why it's important, okay? So when you are working on your project, okay, you want the last step. You think, oh God, I'm almost there. I'm finding off. All I got to do is get these loose ends going and we'll be set. Well, the fact is that you're not quite done yet. You want to block, okay? And blocking just adds this extra element of to your project, okay? It finishes your stitches. It evens things out. If you've got tension that's a little off here or over there, it's going to even that. If you've got something that got twisted or screwed up in some way, it fixes that. So blocking is your friend. Blocking's your friend, okay? So, but you want to make sure that what you're working with and the materials that you're working with are being blocked in the right way, all right? And in order to know that, you got to know about different fibers. And so with yarn, okay, it's not just wool and cotton like it used to be, all right? So over time, it's gotten much better, and all these different fibers have made their way into our lives, so we're not just knitting with something that's scratchy and crummy like that, my mom used to have when I was growing up. Ugh. Okay, so, but the different fibers have different properties to them, of course, all right? So let's talk about the different types of yarn that you have. So you've got protein-based yarns, you've got cellulose, okay, and those are plant-based fibers. You've got synthetic fibers, and you've got kind of this combination of both, cellulosic, okay? So protein fibers include any animals that, any fibers that have come from an animal. So of course we've got all of our stuff that comes from sheep, all right? We've got all our wools, okay? And that includes regular old wool, when you've got something like a big, fat, chunky wool in the gang, beautiful, crazy, sexy wool here. And then it goes down to all the wool that's been superwashed, merino, those types of things. Superwash just means it's been cleaned. It tries to get all of the lanolin out of it. So lanolin is what a lot of people are allergic to when you are dealing with wool, okay? And what it does is it just gets rid of that. Now, lanolin is good, though, if you've got something that's a heavy, like a fisherman's sweater or the Norwegian, Scandinavian type sweaters that you want for the warmth, okay? Because lanolin creates this extra layer of protection. It makes it waterproof. It's really good for that. But if it's itchy and scratchy and you're never going to wear it, then that's maybe not what you want, okay? You've got different camelids, okay? So here you've got, of course, alpaca, you've got vicuña, you've got llamas, you've got those types of animals, camels, that are in this world, okay? And those have really beautiful fibers and they knit so beautifully, but they're very delicate and you have to really be careful with how you take care of those. And so we are going to talk about that, but I mean, here we've got, this is a beautiful, soft alpaca. Okay, this one is called Sugar Baby Alpaca. So we've got that. You've got a kind of a combination where you've got this brushed, okay? So you've got this material that's got this gorgeous, gorgeous halo, okay? And this was Illuminati, okay? And so this is gorgeous. But again, you've got this very delicate material. Cashmere, okay, we'll talk about that in just a minute. But cashmere, this is usually from goats, okay, so goat material. So cashmere is gorgeous and it's so soft. But it's from usually younger goats, okay? When the goats get older, their fur or hair becomes more dense and thick and scratchy, which is in the, times gone by, before all these synthetic fibers, they would use them for materials that got used a lot. So like think theater seats and, things that, chairs that were used a lot of, in and out of. So a lot of wear because it's thicker and more coarse. Not as lovely as a nice little cashmere that we've got going on here. All right. So then you've got different types of Angora. And then we've got rabbit fur that comes with that. There's sheep Angora. There's goat Angora. There's rabbit Angora, and you've got musk ox. You've got yak. You've got all these different areas. Kivik that we use for that, and those materials, they are very beautiful and luxurious, like a Road to China light from the fiber company. So those materials, very gorgeous. Silk. I mean, think of those little wormies that eat the mulberry, and then they create this gorgeous, gorgeous silk. But again, tiny little worms it takes to make this beautiful silk. That's why it's expensive. Okay, so the harder it is to come by, baby anything, because you only get one shearing of the baby alpaca, okay, or the baby goat or what have you, they're going to cost more money because there's not as much around. Okay, once they're done with their first shaving, that's all you got. Then they get into the regular alpaca, vicuña, those types of animals, okay? I mean, you have, even people use opossum. There's this stuff in Australia called roadkill. So I'm just like, ooh, here's your roadkill sweater. I feel like it. It's made from something dead. Enjoy. But so those are different types of properties, that you've got with proteins. And then you've got, of course, your grown materials here, your cellulose. So you've got think of things that are in a seed pod, like cotton, okay? Or things that are in a husk. So you've got hemp that comes in these husks that they use, all those strings on the inside. You've got linen that comes in the stalk, okay, of these plants. So those are natural based, okay? Some are organic, some are not. Depends on how they're farmed, okay? Then you've got your synthetics, so your polyester, you've got your nylons, you've got your acrylics, okay? And then there are different types of materials that are based, and they're kind of between the two of them. So you've got some soy products, you've got bamboo, you've got corn that they even use. And then we've got things like acetate, rayon, okay? So these materials that are kind of worked between things that are synthetic and things that are grown, all right? So how do you do this? How do you take care of these products? Well, again, we really recommend blocking. And again, I'm going to say this caveat because you got to remember that anything the label tells you supersedes anything you see anywhere else, okay? You've got to trust your labels, all right? So what the information I'm going to tell you now is just kind of generic in general. So want to make sure that, you go by your label. Don't come back and be like, Tracy, you said, no, read your label, try a swatch of it, okay? If you're really concerned, swatch it before you do anything else, okay? But these will kind of help you with guidelines. So when you block something like wool, okay, 100% wool, it does not do well being completely soaked, okay? There are exceptions. We're going to talk about this one, all right? So if you take something like Crazy Sexy Wool, it's 100% wool. It's got that scratchiness. There's a lot of scales on it. The scales on the fiber shafts of the hair, okay, are what bind together to create warmth. They have this friction that comes together with these scales, and that's why these materials like a wool will hold your stitches beautifully. Okay, there's no softness to them. They all come together, and that's why you see these gorgeous, these sweaters that are made in Scandinavia, and all these colorwork sweaters with these gorgeous yolks and things like that, because they hold the stitches really beautifully. That's why you work with that material. Not only is it warm, but it looks gorgeous when you're done working with it, okay? If you put these in any type of heat, it's going to felt. You've all had that mistake. You've got this sweater or a hat or something that got somehow thrown into the wash. You take it out and it's this big. You're like, this is great for my Barbie, but it's not good for me, okay? So you don't want to put any of these things in heat unless that's your plan. Okay, and if you're gonna felt something, don't spend a lot of money, because then it don't just you start off with something this big and it shrinks to this big. Buy cheap yarn, buy cheap wool. Okay, there's tons of it out there. Come here, I've got a whole row of it. All right, so if you're gonna felt it, don't spend a lot of money on it. Okay, because you're just gonna kind of ruin it to get the effect that you want. All right, now we've got certain things here. So we've got this absolutely gorgeous, okay, biche and bouche. All right, this is pure lamb's wool from Scotland, all right? So here it is called Le Gros Lamb's Wool, all right? So here we reached out and Astrid got back to us from this company, and they actually do recommend wet blocking this because it makes your stitches bloom. So here you've got it, it's a little bit scratchier, it's more coarse. So this is good for color work because again, it's going to hold your stitches, but it softens as you use it. And when you wet block it, it blooms and it just kind of bursts your stitches and just fills in all those places that have a little bit of a gap, or maybe you got a little twisted or your tension was off. It just fixes all of that. The challenge with these materials are when you block this type of wool and it's dark color, because we had that cranberry beautiful color, it bled everywhere. So watch your materials. You don't want things to bleed. And again, if you're going to put things in hot water, there is a chance that it's going to shrink, okay? Because this material is fickle, all right? So don't use hot water. Always use cold water when blocking it. And a lot of these you don't even want to block. You can put a little bit of Eucalyptus, all right? So here's some Eucalyptus. Use a cap full of this and put it in cold water, shake it up in the spray bottle, and you can spritz it, and then you can kind of press down or make changes to your material so that it stays in the best way that you can find. All right, so there is that. Now, if you're working with something that is a little more high maintenance, and I'm going to say high maintenance because these are your high-end materials. You've got your Angora, you've got your cashmere, you have stuff like this beautiful mohair, all right? So what happens is these fluffy fibers, sometimes they're a little bit longer than others, but they've got just a few of those scales on them. The scales will come together and hold your projects, okay? And it does create a little bit of warmth if that's what you're looking for. But these are great for things that you want to have drape with, things that you want to make like a shawl or something that's airy and that you can use in the warmer months because it's nice and small and it's light. All right, this material is very bad if you have to frog it. So look what happens. All right, it gets all bunched up, it breaks, everything kind of comes together like this, and then it's a hot mess and you have to cut it, or you've got these giant, you've got fluff balls that are now all under my contacts and stuff like that. So if you have to frog it, this is not your friend, all right? So, but these are the fluffy fibers that we're talking about. So materials like this, we've got cashmere, okay? If you are working with these materials, you can wet block them. Now, when you're wet blocking things like this, you have to be very careful. You don't want to put your thing in water. Usually what I do is I fill up this bowl, fill it up with water till halfway. I use a cap full of the eucalyptus, and then you want to agitate it with your hand. You don't want to use your project because then it's going to kind of rub all these fibers together, and that's what's going to cause a big knot, or it's going to cause kind of this mess, or it's going to mat your fibers down, and it's going to change the look and perhaps ruin the look of your material. All right, so you want to agitate it first. You very gently lay it in the water, and you let it soak for a little bit of time. Now, if I'm wet blocking, I usually do about 15 minutes. I set an alarm, I, do some Facebooking or what have you, and then I take it out, all right? When you're taking out these materials, you've got to be very careful to, because they will stretch as you take them out, so you very gently take the water out of it. You don't ever twist, okay? Because that will, again, stretch your stitches. The less you can do to disrupt what's going on, okay, is better for your material, all right? So with those types, anything that's got fluffiness to it, it's very delicate, it's very fickle, and you want to be very careful with how you use it. No heat at all. I mean, don't put it out in the sun because you want it to speed up, okay? I don't mean put it on top of the dryer because you want it to speed up the drying. No, let it take the time it needs. Any bit of heat is going to gum up the work. It's going to ruin the properties of your yarn, okay? And it's going to change. It can definitely melt it. It can, you can felt it. There's a lot of things that can go wrong with this, all right? So again, if you're using this, all right, they want you to have it lay flat. So this was a hat I made this week just for this project here, all right? So I very gently wet blocked it because I read the instructions and said, okay, and I very gently, and then I just kind of went through and I'm putting the pieces together. You want it to lay flat. If you lay it so it's bent over the side or in a weird crease or to sit in a way that is unnatural for the project, so like if you had a sweater and you don't have it so it's like this, and part of it's going to look like this if it dried like that, okay, because it sets your work. And so the way you want your work to look when it's done, you got to make sure that you're setting it. Lace, again, you've got this very delicate, fine lace weight material, and blocking, it's amazing for it, okay? So you can put these rods in through the whole piece. It will just show your material, all those yarn overs, all that time for your pattern. It's going to make that pattern really just come to life. So wet blocking that, as long as it's okay with the material, it just finishes the project beautifully. Okay, but again, you've got to set it flat, and there are different things you can use. All right, so you've got materials that are synthetic, or then socks. Okay, now socks, there's all different kinds of things. All right, so if you've got some sock material, it's going to say hand wash. Do you want to hand wash your socks? Maybe you do. Then you can always dry them on a pair of sock blockers, okay, because they're nice and they're flat, and they're going to give your sock the shape that you want. You can lay them flat, and they get the air underneath it, which is why we use these blocking mats, okay? Blocking mats are better than a towel because towels will hold and retain the moisture because they're cotton, okay? Cotton does that. That's one of the properties of it, all right? But that's why you want something nice and flat. It's going to breathe. You can have a fan coming down, and that will help circulate the air, but you don't want any type of heat. And sunshine, I know it's so easy in the summer, just go, I'm just going to put this outside. It'll just dry so quickly. Don't do it. Avoid the temptation. All right. So that's, kind of what those materials are. Now, when you're working with cotton can be fickle. All right. This is why I'm a runner. You never want to run wearing cotton anything, because what it does is absorbs moisture. Okay. And when it absorbs the moisture, it sits heavy on you. All right. And that's how you get chafing and all those fun things that go along with it. So cotton sometimes can be machine washed and dried, and sometimes it can't. So make sure you're following the label on it. I always default with, if I've knitted it and I don't want it to get ruined, I don't put it in the dryer ever. Okay. Sometimes I do hand wash, usually hand wash, but sometimes I do throw a few things in the washing machine. But again, I hesitate with the dryer. But there are materials here. Okay. So now we're getting into other types of materials. So here I've got Comfort DK by Barocco, and this is made with nylon and acrylic. This is designed to be washed and dried in the machine, okay? So this is something that will be terrific if you're making something for a baby, or things that are going to get a lot of wear and are going to get dirty, okay? So find products that reflect that. And it's going to tell you on the back, all right? The back is going to say machine wash, on cold, or it can be machine washed. And if you don't know what the symbols mean, this one doesn't have it, but if they don't, look them up, okay? I actually have an entire broadcast here. It's the other one when I'm by myself, because I need something to talk about, right? But that's what all those labels mean. So figure it out. Also talk to the people at the yarn store. We got some knowledge up in here. All right. Now, something like this, and in fact, this is kind of the impetus of this whole broadcast, was I got a question about this material. So when you've got something that is made of different products, all right, and you want to wet block it, all right, is it going to felt? That's a challenging question, okay, because things felt at different rates. Wool is very fast to felt, okay? Other things, less so, all right? So if you've got a camel, it doesn't felt as quickly as a wool, okay? Cotton can, but not as quickly as other types of natural proteins, all right? So you've got to look at, they will all felt at different rates. So if you've got something that has got some, it's got a little bit of fluffiness to it, but it's made of different things, cotton or what have you, that it may dry at different rates, and so something may felt and other parts of it won't, and it really will mess up the integrity of your product and the way it looks. So always be careful with whether you're wet blocking or spraying, or you can steam kill with the we've done it with the iron here. That's going to give a little bit of puffiness to it. So if you've got cables and you've had something sitting on top of it and they've gotten squished, a quick with your steam on your iron will kind of pull that out, but you've got to be careful because heat can melt, okay? And then you've got a big old melted mess on your hands, all right? So these are things that you can do. So here we've got just 100% organic cotton, all right? And this is hand dyed, okay? So we've gotten this from Great Adirondack Company, and this is called Well Dressed Sheep, okay? So it's 100% organic cotton, but this you shouldn't throw in the washer and dryer because it's hand dyed, and the last thing you want is for something to run, okay? Because it's hand dyed. A lot of these we recommend when you block it, okay? Block it with salt, because salt will hold the dye in so that it doesn't run, okay? So those are things to look out for. Some labels are terrific, okay? So this is what I've been making my sweater. So I know we've talked about, this is my work in progress here. My whip is the timber sweater. And the only thing I've had time for this week is to work a little bit on this sleeve, all right? So it's a pretty simple project that I've been working on. It's nice and soft, but it is 100% wool, okay? So I know that I'm not gonna wet block it. I'm just gonna spray it a little bit because I know that there's a chance, even with cold water, that it may shrink, all right? And here it's gonna tell you on the back. These labels are great, okay? So this is Cumbria, and it's by the Fiber Company. And so this is a great product, and it spells it out beautifully here. Hand wash, okay? It's gonna tell you here, hand wash, cold, okay? And then it tells you don't do anything but pray that it comes out nicely. It actually doesn't say that on the label, but maybe it should, all right? But so at the end, you know, you can wet block it, but after you've put all this time and money into this, I get nervous, so I would try a little sample first before I just dunked it in a thing of water to see if it's gonna shrink, okay? Because that's the last thing I want on this sweater. It's already, I designed it to be smaller. I don't want it to shrink because then I have to give it to my child. And I know they're not gonna hand wash it because they barely wash their own stuff in the washing machine, okay? Because they're kind of dirtbags. Kids are dirtbags, okay? So again, label on that. If you are working with something like a soft yak, we've got Rowan soft yak. It's beautiful. So it's got the same quality yarn as you're going to get with a wool, okay? But it doesn't have the lanolin, it doesn't have the itchiness or the amount of scales that a wool has. So while it holds your stitches beautifully, okay, it's not going to give you that feeling. But of course, yak is not as prevalent as we're dealing with sheep, okay? So it's going to have a little bit heftier price tag to it. And so with these types of things, again, they do recommend you can hand wash here in cold. But again, and it does say a little bit of, you could probably with your iron. Now, when I was young, my mom would be like, oh, you just wet the towel, you wet the towel, and then you iron the towel. No, actually, that's not a good idea. A lot of these materials can't handle any type of heat, all right? So there's that. Now we've got something like linen, and a lot of these linens can actually be machine washed and dried. I don't do that with this, but this is something because it's a cotton blend. So again, read your labels. They are more resilient. They're not as easy to felt. They are definitely more resilient to agitation, to stuff like that. This material grows and stretches. So blocking it after it's gotten a little bit out of shape is a good way to kind of boop everything back together and pin the pieces down so that you've got your project kind of back to normal and back to the finished look. Something stretched too much though, there's not a lot of help for that one. So we've got people that, we had a person in here yesterday, she was looking at her project was gorgeous, but the pattern had it make it the size of Egypt. So she is going to try to swatch it and then wash it in the machine to see if it will shrink. I'm a little nervous, so we'll keep you posted on that. So again, labels, read your labels. So we're going to figure that out. You have other kinds of fun materials here. So this is by Wonderland Yarns, okay? It is called Sari Ribbon, and it is actual just material, okay, that they've cut up and they've dyed. And I made a purse and some other kind of more hardy things. Because of the dye, I would recommend hand washing it. You don't want to throw this in the washing machine, but because it is made of a material, that is definitely something that can be, hey, come on in, can be hand washed and dried. I'll touch base in just a little while to give you some more details on that. Hang on.